Welcome to the Pandemonium Witches podcast, where the ADHD has just a touch of autism, where the true crime is as scary as the hauntings and unsolved cases. But the hosts never stay on topic for long. I'm Kat.
I'm Rachel.
I'm Em.
And I'm Meg.
Keep your arms, legs, and other extremities in the vehicle at all times, and enjoy the show. This is part 2 of the story of John Wayne Gacy. This is a Pandemonium Witches podcast. Trigger warning. The following episode contains graphic violence and gruesome depictions. Listener discretion is advised. Do you know how hard it was to try and connect my laptop today?
Seriously?
Yeah, no, for no fucking odd reason. Found out it's because the power went out last night. Everything just, my board wasn't working, and I was like, why isn't it working? I disconnected it, reconnected it. Mind you, that was the last step I did. Anyways, how are you?
Well, I'm rested.
Good. Last night was a bit of a shit show because I had pumpkined.
Yes.
Pumpkin. I'd become pumpkin pie. All right. It was beyond pumpkin. I was a whole ass pie.
Yes.
Not even cake at that matter.
So Lieutenant Joseph and two other Des Plaines police officers visited Gacy at his home the following evening. Gacy indicated he had asked one of the youths working at the pharmacy, who he believed to be Robert, whether there was any remodeling materials behind the store. He was adamant, however, that he had not offered Robert a job and had only returned to the pharmacy shortly after 8 p.m. as he had left his appointment book. Gacy promised to come to the station later that evening to make a statement, indicating he was unable to do so at that moment as his uncle had just died. When questioned as to how soon he could come to the police station, he responded, "You guys are very rude. Don't you have any respect for the dead?"
Oh my God. He's the one doing the killing.
Yeah. But of course, he couldn't come right then because he had a dead body in his house.
Right.
Not just under his house, in his house.
In the house. He hadn't even hit it yet.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
At 3:20 a.m., Gacy arrived at the police station covered in mud, claiming he had been involved in a car accident. On returning to the police station later that day, Gacy denied any involvement in Robert's disappearance and repeated that he had not offered him a job. Gacy reiterated that he had returned to the pharmacy in response to a phone call from Torf informing him he had left his appointment book at the store. Detectives had already spoken with Torf, who denied calling Gacy. At the request of detectives, Gacy prepared a written statement detailing his movements on December 11th. Which, this brought around the first search warrant of the house.
Okay. All right, here we go. I'm ready.
Suspecting Gacy might be holding Robert at his house, the police obtained a search warrant on December 13th. This search revealed several suspicious items, including several police badges, a starter pistol, which is usually what people use to start races with. It only can be loaded with blanks.
Right.
A syringe and hypodermic needle, handcuffs, books on homosexuality, and pederasty. P-E-D-E-R-A-S-T-Y.
P-D.
E-E-R-A-S-T-Y.
I don't know.
I know.
P-E-D-E-R. Not Pfeiffer. Oh, P-E-D-E-R-A-S-T-Y. Oh, wait, hold on. I just got it.
Pederasty.
Pederasty. Thank you.
Your voice though.
Thank you, iPhone. Yeah, it's the low audible ones. Because I don't like loud sounds.
It was very creepy sounding though coming across the mic.
I'm sorry. It's my demon box on my phone.
It's fine.
I have the dude on my actual demon box, so.
Pornographic films.
Mm-hmm.
Capsules of amyl nitrate, a dildo, a 2x4 with 2 holes drilled into each end, bottles of Valium and atropine,
Mm-hmm.
several driver's licenses, a blue hooded parka, and underwear too small to fit Gacy. They also found a class ring engraved with the initials of JAS and a Nissan pharmacy photo receipt in a trash can, along with a 36-inch, which is 91 centimeters,
Mm-hmm.
section of nylon rope.
Oh, thank you for putting centimeters in there.
Yes, for our
kilogram and stone poundage people.
For everybody who doesn't use American measurements.
Yes, the normal people.
Yes. On December 15th, investigators obtained further details of Gacy's battery charge, learning Jeffrey Rignall had reported that Gacy had lured him into his car and then chloroformed, raped, and tortured him before dumping him. In an interview with Gacy's former wife the same day, they learned of the disappearance of John Butchkovich. The same day, the class ring was traced to a John Allen Cizik.
Okay.
An interview with John's mother revealed that several items from her son's apartment were also missing, including a Motorola television.
Oh.
Yes. So he went to John's apartment and
took stuff.
Yeah.
What a dirty... So not only is he a murderer and a rapist and a pedophile, he's a thief.
Yes. On December 16th, Gacy was becoming affable with the surveillance detectives, regularly inviting them in to join him for meals in restaurants and occasionally for drinks in bars or at his home. He repeatedly denied involvement with Robert Peace's disappearance and accused the officers of harassing him because of his political connections or his recreational drug use. Knowing these officers were unlikely to arrest him on anything trivial, he taunted them by flouting traffic laws and succeeded in losing his pursuers more than once. That afternoon, Cram, the other roommate, consented to a police interview in which he revealed that because of his poor timekeeping, Gacy had once given him a watch, explaining he got it from a dead person.
Right. And that's not any indication that he's done something?
Investigators conducted a formal interview of Rossi, the other roommate, on December 17th. He informed them Gacy had sold him John Cizik's vehicle, explained that he had bought the car from Cizik because he needed the money to move to California.
Mm-hmm.
A further examination of Gacy's Oldsmobile revealed a small cluster of fibers in the trunk, suspected to be human hair. That evening, 3 trained search dogs were used to determine whether Robert Peace had been present in any of Gacy's vehicles. One laid on the passenger seat of the Oldsmobile, and what the dog handlers informed investigators was a death reaction, indicating that the body had been present.
Oh my God.
That evening, Gacy invited detectives Albrecht and Hatchmeister to a restaurant for a meal. On early December 18th, he invited them into another restaurant where over breakfast he discussed his business, his marriages, and his clowning. During the conversation, Gacy remarked, "You know, clowns can get away with murder." But they can't. They really can't.
They really can't.
By December 18th, Gacy was beginning to display signs of strain from the constant surveillance. He was unshaven, looked tired and anxious, and was drinking heavily. That afternoon, he drove to his lawyer's office to prepare a $750,000 civil suit against the police, demanding that they cease their surveillance. The same day, the Nissan pharmacy photo receipt found in Gacy's kitchen was traced to 17-year-old Kimberly Byers, a colleague of Robert Peace at the pharmacy. Byers stated she had borrowed Peace's parka earlier in the evening and had placed the receipt in the pocket just before she returned the coat to him as he left the store. Yep. The same evening, Rossi was interviewed a second time. This time, he was more cooperative. He informed detectives that in the summer of '77, at Gacy's behest, he had spread 10 bags of quicklime in the crawl space of the house. On December 19th, investigators began compiling evidence for a second search warrant for Gacy's house. The same day, Gacy's lawyers filed the civil suit against the police. The hearing for the suit was scheduled for December 22nd. That afternoon, Gacy invited the surveillance detectives inside his house again. As Robinson distracted Gacy with conversation, Schultz walked into Gacy's bedroom in an unsuccessful attempt to write down the serial number of the Motorola television they suspected belonged to Cizik.
Oh my God.
While flushing Gacy's toilet, because, on the ruse that he was using the bathroom, the officer noted a smell he suspected could be that of rotting corpses emanating from a heating duct. Because it's December. It's snowing outside. You have to have the heat on.
Yeah.
So heat just makes the smell more prominent.
Oh no.
The officers who had searched Gacy's house previously had failed to notice this as the house had been cold. So, because they searched it when he either, had the windows open or the AC was on. But with the heater being on, it heats up the crawl space.
Oh my God. Oh no. Oh no.
That's why rotting bodies in the heat stink so much.
I know. Well, yeah, I do know, but I mean,
it speeds up the decomp.
Right.
And so it breaks down the body faster.
Yeah.
Investigators interviewed both Cram and Rossi on December 20th. When questioned as to where he believed Gacy had concealed Robert Peace's body, Rossi replied, "Gacy may have placed the body in the crawl space." Rossi agreed to submit to a polygraph test. He denied any involvement in the disappearance or any knowledge of the whereabouts. He soon refused to continue the questioning, and Rossi's erratic and inconsistent responses while attached to the machine rendered Konzaniak, I believe that was the lieutenant.
Okay.
Let me double check that real quick. Yes, the Lieutenant Joseph.
Okay.
Rendered Lieutenant Joseph unable to render a definite opinion as to the truthfulness. Rossi did, however, further discuss the trench digging he did in the crawl space and remarked on Gacy's insistence that he not deviate from where he was instructed to dig. Because if he deviated, he would find a body.
Right.
Cram informed investigators of Gacy's attempts to rape him in 1976. He stated that after he and Gacy had returned to his home after the December 13th search, Gacy had turned pale after seeing a clod of mud on his carpet and had immediately entered the crawl space to look for evidence of digging. When asked whether he had been to the crawl space, Cram replied he had once been asked by Gacy to spread lime down there and had also dug trenches, which Gacy had explained were for drainage pipes. Cram stated these trenches were 2 feet, which is 0.6 meters wide, 6 feet, 1.8 meters long, and 2 feet deep, the size of graves.
Right.
On the evening of December 20th, Gacy drove to his lawyer's office in Park Ridge to attend a scheduled meeting, ostensibly to discuss the progress of his civil suit. Gacy appeared anxious and disheveled and immediately asked for an alcoholic drink. Sam Amirati, was one of his lawyers, fetched a bottle of Seagram's whiskey, and Gacy immediately drank 2 cupfuls. Lawyer Sam, by this state dubious of Gacy's claims of innocence, then asked what he had to discuss with them, placing a copy of the Daily Herald on his desk and stated, "You said you had something new to tell me, something important." Gacy picked up the newspaper, pointed to the front page article covering the disappearance of Peace, and said, "This boy is dead. He's dead. He's in a river."
No.
Gacy then proceeded to give a rambling confession that ran into the early hours of the following morning. He began by stating he had been the judge, jury, and executioner of many, many people, and that he now wanted to be the same for himself. He stated he had murdered at least 30 victims, most of whom he had buried in his crawl space, and had disposed of 5 other bodies in the Des Plaines River. Gacy dismissed his victims as male prostitutes, hustlers, and liars, adding he sometimes awoke to find dead, strangled kids with their hands cuffed behind their back. He had buried their bodies in his crawl space as he believed they were his property.
You're kidding.
Mm-mm.
Sorry. You're kidding.
Like, I'm trying to
Go.
get through this because it's a lot.
Go.
As a result of the alcohol he had consumed, Gacy fell asleep midway through his confession. Lawyer Sam immediately arranged a psychiatric appointment for Gacy that morning. Upon awakening several hours later, Gacy shook his head when informed by Lawyer Sam he had confessed to killing approximately 30 people, saying, "Well, I can't think about this right now. I've got things to do." Ignoring his lawyer's advice regarding his scheduled appointment, Gacy left to attend his business. Gacy later recollected his memories of his final day of freedom as being hazy, adding he knew his arrest was inevitable and that he intended to visit his friends and say his farewells.
What the fuck?
After leaving his lawyer's office, Gacy drove to a gas station where he handed a small bag of cannabis to the attendant, who immediately handed the bag to the surveillance officers, adding that Gacy had told him, "The end is coming for me. These guys are going to kill me." Gacy then drove to the home of a fellow contractor and friend, Ronald Rode. Gacy hugged Rode before bursting into tears and saying, "I've been a bad boy. I killed 30 people, give or take a few." Gacy then left Rode and drove to Cram's home to meet with Cram and Rossi. The surveillance officers noticed he was holding a rosary to his chin, praying while he drove along the expressway. After meeting with his 2 former roommates, Gacy had Cram drive him to a scheduled legal meeting. Graham informed the surveillance officers that Gacy had told him and Rossi that he had confessed to over 30 murders with his lawyers the previous evening. Gacy then had Graham drive him to Maryhill Cemetery where his father was buried. As Gacy drove to various locations that morning, police outlined the formal draft of their second search warrant, specifically to search for Pierce's body in the crawl space. On hearing from the surveillance detectives that, in light of his erratic behavior, Gacy might be about to commit suicide, the police decided to arrest him on a charge of possession and distribution of cannabis in order to hold him in custody, as the formal request for a second search warrant was present.
Good.
Because at this point, we're worried you might kill yourself before we get this shit done.
Right.
We're just going to hold you in a secure location where you can't hurt yourself. At 4:30 p.m. on December 21st, the eve of the hearing of Gacy's civil suit, a second search warrant was granted. After the police informed Gacy of their intentions to search his crawl space for the body of Robert Peace, Gacy denied that the teenager was buried there, but confessed to having killed in self-defense a young man whose body was buried under his garage. Armed with the signed search warrant, police and evidence technicians drove to the home. They found Gacy had unplugged his sump pump, which usually people use for their septic tanks or their sewage.
Right.
Which flooded the crawl space with water. They replaced the plug and waited for the water to drain. Evidence technician Daniel Genty then entered the 28 by 38 foot, which is 8.5 meters by 11.6 meters crawl space, crawled to the southwest area and began digging. Within minutes, he uncovered putrefied flesh and a human arm bone. Genty then shouted to the investigators that they could charge Gacy with murder, adding, "I think this place is full of kids." A police photographer uncovered a patella, which is your kneecap, in the northeast corner. The two then began digging in the southeast corner, uncovering 2 lower leg bones. The victims were too decomposed to be pieced. As the body in the northeast corner was unearthed, a crime scene technician discovered the skull of a second victim alongside his body. Later excavations of the feet of the second victim revealed a further skull beneath that body.
Ooh.
Because of this, technicians returned to the trench where the first body was unearthed and discovered the ribcage of a fourth victim, confirming the scale of the murders. After being informed that the police had found human remains in his crawl space and that he was now facing murder charges, Gacy told officers he wanted to clear the air.
Oh, now?
Because he's caught.
Huh? Look at the consequences of your actions.
Oh, I know.
It's almost like the consequences of their actions. Look who hit the consequence. Look who hit the consequences of their actions now.
In the early morning hours of December 22nd, and in the presence of his lawyers, because lawyers are present, Gacy provided a formal statement in which he confessed to murdering approximately 30 young males, all of whom he claimed had entered his house willingly. Some victims were referred to by name, but Gacy claimed not to know or remember most of the names. He claimed all were teenage male runaways or male prostitutes, the majority of whom he had buried in his crawl space. Gacy claimed to have dug only 5 of the graves in this location and had his employee, including Godzik, dig the remaining trenches so that he would have graves available. When shown a driver's license attached to a Robert Haston, which had been found on his property, Gacy claimed not to know him, but admitted that this license had been in possession of one of his victims. In January of 1979, he had planned to conceal the corpses even further by covering the entire crawl space with concrete. So they literally got him just in time.
Just in time.
When questioned specifically about Robert Peast, because they're still hoping to find him alive, but
right,
they're drawing the conclusion that it's unlikely at this point. Gacy confessed to luring him to his house and strangling him on December 11th. He also admitted to having slept alongside his body that evening.
What?
Yeah.
Holy keep going.
Before disposing of the body in the Des Plaines River in the early hours of December 13th. On his way to the police station, he had been in a minor traffic accident after disposing of the body. His vehicle had slid off an ice-covered road and had to be towed free. So he actually wasn't lying about that.
No, he wasn't.
He just wasn't truthful about all the things.
Holy crap.
Accompanied by police, his lawyers, and his older sister, Gacy was driven to the I-55 bridge on December 23rd to pinpoint the precise spot where he confessed to have thrown the body of Robert Peast and the 4 other victims into the river. Gacy was then taken to his house and instructed to mark his garage floor with orange spray paint to show where he had buried the individual he had supposedly killed in self-defense, whom he named as John Wetkovich. To assist officers in their search, Gacy drew a rough diagram of his basement to indicate where their bodies were buried. 26 bodies were unearthed from Gacy's crawlspace over the next week. 3 others were also unearthed elsewhere on the property. As the flooring and walls of the property were dismantled, additional evidence, including identification cards and further deviant sex books, were discovered. And the reason why he agreed to give them a drawing, because he hoped that they wouldn't completely dismantle his whole house.
Right.
Well, joke was on him. They did anyways.
Right. They completely did, because they knew that he was lying.
Because they're like, okay, well, if he buried the bodies here, where else could he have buried them?
Right.
Gacy was brought to trial on February 6, 1980, charged with 33 murders.
Ooh.
He was tried in Cook County, Illinois, before Judge Louis Garipo. The jury was selected from Rockford because of extensive press coverage in Cook County. So to make sure he got a fair trial, they had to bring in outside jurors.
Right, because also a good surrounding of his victims.
Of the county was, either knew the victims, was
right.
friends with the victims' family, like acquaintances, co-workers, something.
Cross-contamination,
And so to make sure he had a fair trial, had to bring in outside people.
Right.
At the request of his defense counsel, Gacy spent over 300 hours with doctors at the Menard Correctional Center in Chester in the year before his trial. He underwent a variety of psychological tests to determine whether he was mentally competent to stand trial. Gacy attempted to convince the doctors that he had a multiple personality disorder. He claimed to have 4 personalities: the hard-working, civil-minded contractor, the clown, the active politician, and a policeman that he named Jack Hanley, whom he often referred to as Bad Jack.
It's not how that works, but okay.
Right. That's not how any of this works.
No.
When Gacy had confessed to police, he claimed to be relaying the crimes of Jack, who detested homosexuality and viewed male prostitutes as weak, stupid, and degraded scum. Which, not how that works, because when a different personality takes over, you have no memory, no recollection of what happens.
It's like you check out. It's the same thing that happens when you get, when I get possessed anyways, which doesn't happen all that often. It's not an everyday occurrence here, people. But, it's one of those things where it's like, what was I even doing? And I get mortified sometimes, and I'm like, oh my God, I ate I had a whole bite of a piece of butter. I spit it out.
Oh, okay,
And
good. I was
I
about to
didn't, no, I didn't eat it, but there was like a bite taken out of the butter, and I went into the thing, and I was like, but I was in the middle of making pasta, and the butter was on the counter, and Frank flew in and then flew out, and he was like, that was cool. And I was like, can we not? There are boundaries in place, my dude.
might have been cool for you. It was not for me.
Anyways, keep going. Going.
Um, his lawyers opted to have Gacy plead not guilty by reason of insanity because that was probably their best bet at that point.
Right.
In his opening statement, one of his defense attorneys, Robert Mata, remarked, the insanity defense has been looked upon as an escape, a defense of last resort. The defense of insanity is valid and it is the only defense that we could use here because that is where the truth lies. Because if Gacy is normal, then our concept of normality is totally distorted. I mean, that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Presenting Gacy as a Jekyll and Hyde character, the defense produced several psychiatric experts who had examined Gacy, and 3 testified they found him to be a paranoid schizophrenic with multiple personalities. Because that's who he wanted them to see.
Right.
The prosecutors argued that Gacy was sane and in full control of his actions. They produced several witnesses to testify to his premeditation and the efforts. Excuse me. And the efforts he took to escape detection. The doctors refuted the defense doctors' claims of multiple personalities and insanity. His 2 former roommates, Cram and Rossi, testified that Gacy had them dig drainage trenches and spread bags of lime in his crawl space.
Oh my God.
Both of them said Gacy looked periodically into the crawl space to ensure they or any other employees they supervised did not deviate from the precise locations he had marked. On February 18th, Robert Steen testified that all the bodies recovered from Gacy's property were markedly decomposed and putrefied, skeletalized remains, and that all of the autopsies he performed, 13 victims had died of asphyxiation, 6 of ligature strangulation, 1 of multiple stab wounds to the chest, and 10 in undetermined ways. When Gacy's defense team suggested that all 33 deaths were caused by accidental erotic asphyxiation, Robert Steen called this highly improbable. So they were trying to shoot
right
from any angle possible.
Right. There's no way. There's no way.
Isn't mathin'.
No.
Remember Jeffrey Vrignall?
Yes.
You know, the one he dumped alive? He testified for the defense on February 21st.
Good.
He wept repeatedly while describing of the torture that was put on him back in March of 1978. During this specific cross-examination relating to the torture, Rignall vomited and was excused from further testimony.
Jeez.
On February 29th, David Voorhees Sr. Testified to, no, Jr. Sorry. My notes just says Donald Voorhees, and I forgot to mark which one it was. Don Jr.
Okay.
Testified to his ordeal at Gacy's hands and his assault at Gacy's behest. Don Jr. felt unable to testify, but did briefly attempt to do so before being asked to step down. Robert Donnelly testified the week after Don Jr., recounting his ordeal at Gacy's hands in December of 1977. Robert Donnelly was visibly distressed as he recalled the abuse. During the 5th week of the trial, Gacy wrote a personal letter to the judge requesting a mistrial for reasons including that he did not approve of his lawyer's insanity plea, that his lawyers had not allowed him to take the witness stand as he had wanted to do, and that his defense had not called enough medical witnesses, that the police were lying with regard to verbal statements he had allegedly made to detectives after his arrest, and that in any event, the statements were self-serving for use by the prosecution.
What?
The judge informed Gacy that both counsels had not been denied the opportunity or funds to summon expert witnesses to testify, and that, under the law, he had the choice whether he wished to testify and was free to indict as much to the judge. Basically, the judge is like, if you want to shoot yourself in the foot, go right for it.
Right.
We're now at the closing arguments.
Okay.
On March 11th, the final arguments by both teams of attorneys began. Prosecuting attorney Terry Sullivan outlined Gacy's history of abusing youth, the testimony of his efforts to avoid detection, and describing his surviving victims, Voorhees and Donnelly, as living dead. Referring to Gacy as the worst of all murderers, Terry Sullivan stated, John Gacy has accounted for more human devastation than many earthly catastrophes. I tremble when thinking about how close he came to getting away with it all.
He almost did.
Yeah. After the state's 4-hour closing, 4 hours.
4 hours.
Lawyer Sam spoke for the defense. Lawyer Sam accused Sullivan of scarcely referring to the evidence in his own closing argument and of arousing hatred against his client.
The audacity.
He attempted to portray Gacy as driven by compulsions he was unable to control, contending the state had not met their burden of proving Gacy sane beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right, okay. Sure.
Sam then urged the jury to put aside any prejudice they held against his client and asked they deliver a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity, asking that Gacy was a danger to both himself and to others, and that studying his psychology and behavior would be of benefit to science.
Right. How about no?
Right, like, that's just no. Sorry, had to take a quick drink break.
Oh, no, you're fine. I'm just, I'm fading quick, and my mom's already texted twice.
Okay, I'm trying to hurry this up.
No. You're fine. I have to talk to my cousin. She's having a personal crisis.
Oh, no.
No, she needs big sister time. So, I kind of have to do it, so I have to stay awake. So, the more we talk about this, the better, because I won't be able to have any sexy thoughts tonight. So,
none whatsoever.
None at all. Mm-mm.
Okay. The morning of March 12th, William Kunkel continued to argue for the prosecution.
Okay.
William referred to the defense's contention of insanity as a sham, arguing that the facts of the case demonstrated Gacy's ability to think logically and control his actions. William also referred to the testimony of one of the doctors who had examined Gacy in 1968 and had concluded he was an antisocial personality, stating that had the recommendations of this doctor been heeded, he would not have been freed.
Right.
At the close of his arguments, William Kunkel removed photos of Gacy's 22 identified victims from a display board and asked the jury not to show sympathy, but to show justice.
Good.
The jury deliberated for 1 hour and 50 minutes. He was found guilty of 33 charges of murder, but he was also found guilty of sexual assault and taking indecent liberties with a child, both in reference to Robert Peast.
Good.
At the time, his conviction for 33 murders was the most for which any person in the U.S. history had been convicted.
Well, yeah.
In the sentencing phase of the trial, the jury deliberated for more than 2 hours before sentencing him to death for each murder committed after the Illinois statute on capital punishment came into effect in June of 1977. His execution was set for June 2nd, 1980.
Good.
Upon being sentenced, he was transferred to the Menard Correctional Center, where he remained on death row for 14 years.
Ma'am?
I know.
Okay.
He was isolated in his prison cell, where he began to paint.
No. Oh.
He drew inspiration from a wide range of sources for his artwork, depicting subjects as diverse as clowns, including himself as Pogo or Patches, Jesus Christ, birds, skulls, his own home, and John Dillinger.
Bought them?
No, he was drawing them.
I saw his drawings. They're like my 3-year-old autistic nephew is more artistic talent in his pinky toe.
Mm-hmm. His paintings have been displayed at exhibitions and sold at auction.
Jesus.
During his trial, he initiated contact with journalist Russ Ewig, to whom he granted numerous interviews between 1979 and 1981. Ewig later collaborated with author Tim Cahill to publish the book Buried Dreams. The information Gacy divulged to the journalist regarding the circumstances of his first murder would prove instrumental in establishing the identity of his first victim. On February 15th of 1983, Henry Brisbane, a fellow death row inmate known as the I-57 killer, stabbed Gacy in the arm with a sharpened wire.
Yes!
He then received treatment in the prison hospital. Damn. I mean, it was an arm wound. It's just a flesh wound.
Just merely a flesh wound. I got so excited for a second, man.
I know. Like, you became known as the I-57 killer and you couldn't kill him?
Right. God.
It would have been so much poetic justice.
Disappointing.
While being incarcerated, Gacy read law books and filed many motions and appeals, although he did not prevail in any of them.
Of course not.
His appeals related to issues such as the validity of the first search warrant granted back on December 13th of 1978, and his objection to his lawyer's insanity plea defense.
Oh my God.
Gacy contended that although he had some knowledge of 5 of the murders, those of McCoy, Butkovich, Godzik, Cizik, and Peast, the other 28 murders had been committed by employees who had keys to his house while he was away on business trips.
Right, and I'm the Queen of Sheba.
Right. In mid-1984, the Supreme Court of Illinois upheld his conviction and ordered his execution by lethal injection on November 14th.
Good.
Gacy filed an appeal against this decision, which was denied by the Supreme Court of the United States on March 4th of 1985. The following year, he filed a further post-conviction petition seeking a new trial. His then defense lawyer, Richard Kling, argued that he had been provided with ineffective legal counsel for his 1980 trial. The petition was dismissed on September 11th of 1986. Gacy appealed the 1985 decision that he be executed. The Illinois Supreme Court upheld his conviction on September 29th of 88, setting a new execution date of January 11th of 89. After the U.S. Supreme Court denied his final appeal in October of 93, the Illinois Supreme Court formally set an execution date of May 10th of 94.
Oh, that's right around the corner. We're coming to the anniversary. Okay. All right.
Yes. Just this week.
Well, technically.
This week of us recording.
Yes.
On the morning of May 9th of 94, he was transferred to Stateville Correctional Center to be executed. That afternoon, he was allowed a private picnic on the prison grounds with his family. I wonder who showed up for that.
I know, because his dad's dead.
I would assume by this point his mother's dead too.
Right.
I mean, he has 2 sisters.
He has his ex-wife.
He has 2 ex-wives, one of which he has 2 kids with, but he never saw them again, so obviously not them. Right.
I mean, maybe his kids still came just to kind of like come, but I don't think they would have stayed. Like who?
I don't know.
That's something we're going to have to look up, and then I'll insert a clip.
Yeah.
Of me with the information once I look it up. After hours of diligent research, it came to our attention that Gacy had no one attend his last meal with him. We will keep you posted.
Right. For his last meal, he ordered a bucket of KFC.
Shut up.
French fries, a dozen fried shrimp, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke.
Oh, and of course, he's got to watch his girlish figure.
Right. That evening, he received the last rites from a Catholic priest before being escorted to the Statesville execution chamber.
Mm-hmm.
In the hours leading up to the execution, a crowd estimated at over 1,000 gathered outside the correctional center. A vocal majority were in favor of the execution, although a small number of anti-death penalty protesters were present, because of course.
There always is.
Yes.
Every time. Yeah.
Some of those in favor of the execution wore t-shirts hearkening to Gacy's previous community services as a clown and bearing satirical slogans such as "No tears for the clown."
Good. That's good.
Before the execution began, like I said at the very beginning, the chemicals used to effect the execution solidified unexpectedly, clogging the IV tube. So they then had to replace the clogged tube, and the execution then resumed. The entire procedure took 18 minutes. So just off to such a lovely start.
Right.
Anesthesiologists blamed the problem on the prison officials' inexperience at conducting execution. It could have been anything, honestly.
Right.
This error apparently led to Illinois adopting an alternative method of lethal injection, which means they swapped out the drugs.
Right.
One prosecutor at Gacy's trial, William Kunkel, said he got a much easier death than any of his victims.
He did.
According to published reports, Gacy was a diagnosed psychopath who did not express any remorse for his crimes. His final statement to his lawyer before his execution was that killing him would not compensate for the loss of others and that the state was murdering him.
Jesus Christ.
His final spoken words were reported to be "kiss my ass," although prosecutor William Kunkel stated in 2020 that these words were spoken to a prison official and were not part of any official statement execution.
They were still technically his last.
Yes.
Still
the fact
technically.
You told prison official "kiss my ass" was hilarious.
That's great. It's great.
After his death was confirmed at 12:58 a.m. on May 10th, 1994, his brain was removed. It is in the possession of Helen Morrison, a witness for the defense at his trial, who has interviewed Gacy and other serial killers in an attempt to isolate common personality traits of violent sociopaths.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of his body was cremated. In 1984, lawyer Sam authorized procedures that were incorporated by the Illinois General Assembly into the Missing Child Recovery Act of 1984. By the time of Gacy's murder, Illinois police had to wait 72 hours before initiating a search for a missing child or adolescent. The Missing Child Recovery Act removed this waiting period. Other states subsequently adopted similar procedures. As a result, a national network aimed at locating missing children was gradually formed. This has since developed into the Child Abduction Emergency, commonly known as the Amber Alert.
That's good, though.
Yes. Only 28 of his victims have been conclusively identified. The youngest were Samuel Stapleton and Michael Marino, who were both 14, the eldest being Francis Alexander and Russell Nelson, both were 21.
Those were the Marines. They were both the Marines that they got picked up outside the...
I don't think so. I think they were 20.
Okay.
So the medical examiner had supervised the exhumes of the bodies. And the crawl space was marked in sections, and each body was given an identification number. The first body that was recovered was assigned marker denoting the victim as body 1. He was identified as John Prestige on January 16th, 1978. No cause of death could be determined. As they were pulling them out, they each got numbers. Some were identified through dental records, some x-rays. Some were by the clothes that they were still wearing.
Oh. That's heavy.
Yes. I'm skipping over a lot of it because it's a lot and I don't have the spoons. I'm really sorry.
You know what we can do? Why don't we put a tick in it? Oh my God. Those are the layouts from the house?
The first one...
Are those where all the bodies were? The black?
So yeah. The one on the left is his drawing. And then the one on the right is basically
the actual drawing itself.
Yeah.
So the layout. So he's got a garage, body found on the floor in the garage. What's that tiny, tiny print?
I couldn't figure it out.
Okay.
Something shed.
Okay. I mean, that's better than what I can get.
Yeah.
It looks like wheat to me. I don't even know what it says. And of course, we'll post it on Facebook.
Yes.
When we release it. So he just decided, I think, aside from, oh God, what's his name? The Russian dude. He was the Russian cannibal who buried them under his floorboards as well. I think there's only like 2 other killers that have done this.
I think so.
Edgar Allan Poe had it right. You know? Hard on the floorboard, nevermore.
Sorry, I'm trying to find... I went back to my links trying to find the photo to see if maybe I can... If it's any clearer on that. Probably not.
I mean...
Okay, yes. Storage shed.
Oh, storage shed.
Yes. Photos. Let's see. There we go.
All right. Oh, okay, that's better. Storage short.
Yeah.
So storage short. So I think he was talking about how big it was. Garage, body found under the garage, backyard, driveway, bodies found in northeast corner of crawl space. Search for more bodies continue. Crawl space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a very detailed picture.
Yes.
But the one of the inside,
right.
he buried them under his bed.
Mm-hmm.
How many nightmares do you think that probably just that's nightmare fuel, you know?
So for us, it is so much haunted, but
Right,
for him, it probably didn't bother him. He probably slept like a fucking baby.
right. That's ugh.
I know.
Okay. So, of course, we took a break, came back.
All right, you ready to jump into this again?
I don't think I'm ready, but we're going to definitely jump right in. That's what's going to happen.
We're gonna do our best. Okay, so I'm gonna backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
So we're covering the victims at this point.
Okay.
So only 28 of his victims have been conclusively identified. The youngest were Samuel Stapleton and Michael Marino, who were both 14.
Fuck's sake.
The eldest were Francis Alexander and Russell Nelson, who were both 21.
Oy.
The Cook County Medical Examiner, Robert Steen, supervised the exhumations of the victims buried on the property.
Mm-hmm.
The crawl space were marked in sections, and each body was given an identification number. So body 1, body 2,
body 3, so on and so forth. Yeah.
The first body recovered from the crawl space was assigned a marker denoting the victim as body 1. He was later identified as John Prestige on January 6, 1979. Mm-hmm. No cause of death could be determined because his body was
too
decomposed.
far gone, right?
John Butkovich was labeled as body 2. He was among the first to be identified on December 29th, 1978. On December 23rd, investigators returned to unearth the 3 corpses which had been buried in the same trench as body 1, which was John Prestige. Body 3, which was identified as John Sizak, was buried in the crawl space directly above body 4, which was Gregory Godzik.
Mm-hmm.
Both were identified December 29th of 78. Body 5 was buried directly beneath body 1, and this victim was discovered 36 inches, which was 910 millimeters, below the surface of the soil, indicating he was the first to be buried in this common grave.
Right.
So, body 5 was later to be determined to be Francis Wayne Alexander. He was not identified until October 25th of 2021.
Jesus Christ. Was that because of DNA or?
I believe so.
Okay.
I also believe he was the last to be identified.
Okay.
Or the latest one they identified. The search was postponed over Christmas. 4 more bodies were unearthed on December 26th.
Ooh.
Body 6, turned to be Samuel Stapleton, who was identified through dental records on November 14th of 79. And body 7, who was Randall Reffett, who was identified through x-rays on April 12th of 79, were buried in the same grave. Randall Reffett was found in a fetal position with a cloth gag in his mouth, leading investigators to conclude he most likely died of asphyxiation. Body 8, which was identified as Matthew Bowman on January 29th of 79, was found with the tourniquets used to strangle him still around his neck. And that was body 8. Body 9, Timothy McCoy, was identified via dental records in a distinctive belt buckle on May of 86. He was found beneath a layer of concrete and had several stab wounds to the ribs and sternum, suggesting he was Gacy's first victim.
Oh, gosh.
On December 27th, 8 more bodies were discovered. Body 10, buried beneath the entrance to the home, remains unidentified, and he is estimated to have been between 17 and 21 years old and between 5'7" and 5'11", which is 170 to 180 centimeters. Both body 11 and body 12 were found with ligatures around their necks and buried beside each other in the center of the crawl space. On September 11th of 79, they were identified as Robert Winch and Tommy Bowling, respectively.
Okay.
Body 13, still unidentified, was found beneath the spare bedroom. He is estimated to have been between 17 and 22 years old and between 5'9" and 6'2", which is 180 to 190 centimeters. Bodies 14 and 15 were recovered from a common grave. Both were found with their head and upper torsos inside separate plastic bags. They were identified using dental records and radiology images as Michael Marino and Kenneth Parker on March 29th of 80, which unfortunately was too late to include among the victims identified before his trial. Body number 16, who was Russell Nelson, who was identified January 6th of 79, was found with a cloth rag lodged deep in his throat, causing him to die of suffocation. The 17th victim, identified as David Talsma, using radiology images on November 16th of 79, was found with a ligature around his neck. The following day, so that was December 28th, 4 more bodies were exhumed. Body 19, that was buried directly beneath his master bedroom. Body 18, who was identified as Michael Bonin on January 6th of 79, was found beneath the spare bedroom and found with the ligature still around his neck. Body 20, who was identified as John Mowry, through dental records on January 27th of 79, was buried in the northwest corner of the crawl space. By December 29th, 6 more bodies were unearthed. Bodies 22, 23, 24, and 26 were buried in a common grave beneath Gacy's kitchen and laundry room, with body 25, who was identified as Robert Gilroy on January 6th of 79, was located beneath the bathroom. Body 26, who is still unidentified, was estimated to have been between 23 and 30 years old and approximately 5'4", which is 160 centimeters in height. Body 22, identified using dental records as William Carroll on March 17th of 79, was found beneath Gacy's kitchen with cloth-like material lodged in his throat.
Oh, God.
Two socks were recovered from the pelvic region. He was buried directly beneath body 21, recovered the previous day. And this victim, who remains unidentified, is estimated to have been aged between 15 and 24 years old and approximately 5'10", which is 180 centimeters in height. The bones of victims 23, which was identified as Rick Johnston on January 1st of 79, and 24 were commingled, and the cloth found inside the mouth of bodies and cloth was found inside the mouths of bodies 24 and 26. Body 25 was found beneath Gacy's bathroom with cloth lodged in the throat, and the final victim recovered from the crawl space was identified as William Kindred on May 16th of 79, was also found beneath the bathroom with a cloth lodged deep in his throat. The operations were suspended due to the Chicago blizzard of 79, but resumed in March despite Gacy's insistence that all of the buried victims had been found, because they don't believe him.
Right. Obviously not, because, I mean...
We're not going to believe you.
Right. He's proved that he's not only a chronological liar, but a pathological liar as well, because, you know, there's a difference.
Oh, yes. On March 9th, body 28 was found wrapped in several plastic bags and buried beneath the patio in the backyard. Oh, so all the buried victims have been found.
And yet again...
You lied! Gacy's likely second murder victim and still unidentified. He stood approximately 5'9", which is 180 centimeters, and is estimated to be aged between 14 and 18 years old. Sorry, lost my place. Give me 1 second.
That's my fault. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Covered the patio. 14, 18. Okay. On March 16th, body 29, Daryl Sampson, who was identified November 18th of 79, was found beneath the dining room. All the victims discovered at the house were in an advanced state of decomposition.
Right.
Dental records and x-ray charts helped the medical examiners identify the remains. 23 were identified via dental records and 2 via skeletal trauma. Because broken bones.
Right.
Medical procedures.
Like braces and stuff like that.
These identifications were supported with personal artifacts found in Gacy's home because he kept souvenirs.
Of course he did.
The head and upper torso of several bodies unearthed beneath Gacy's property had been placed in plastic bags. In some cases, the bodies were found with foreign objects such as prescription bottles lodged in their pelvic region, the position of which indicated that the items had been thrust into the victim's anus.
Oh.
Yeah. The medical examiner concluded 12 victims recovered from the property died of asphyxiation, and Gacy's vacant house was demolished in April of 79. So the victims that he, for lack of a better term, sent downriver. One victim was found 6 miles, which is 9.7 kilometers, downstream from the I-55 bridge on June 30th. Was not connected initially to Gacy. On January 9th of 79, this victim was identified using fingerprint records and a distinctive tattoo as Timothy O'Rourke. An autopsy was unable to rule out strangulation as the cause of death. This victim was numbered 31. Following Gacy's arrest, investigators discovered he was a further victim. Frank Landingens, cause of death was certified at autopsy as suffocation through his own underwear being lodged down his throat. His body was also identified via fingerprint records. A bond slip issued to him the day before his death was found at Gacy's home. He was assigned victim number 32. On December 28th, one further body linked to Gacy was found 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers, from the I-55 bridge. This victim was identified 2 days later as James Mazzara, whom Gacy confessed to having murdered shortly after Thanksgiving. James had been strangled with a ligature. On April 9th of 79, a man walking along the Grundy County towpath discovered a decomposed body tangled in roots on the edge of the Des Plaines River. This body was identified via dental records as being that of Robert Peast that same evening. An autopsy revealed that paper-like material had been shoved down his throat, causing him to suffocate. 5 victims have never been identified, and based on Gacy's confession, the location of the victims buried in the crawl space and forensic analysis, police determined the most likely dates for when his unidentified victims were killed. So, body number 28 was between January 3rd of 72 and July 31st of 75. He was buried in the backyard, and his age ranged from 14 to 18. Body 26 was from June 13th to August 5th of 1976. He was found in the crawl space, and his age was 23 to 30. Body number 13 was August 6th to August 5th of 1976. He was also found in the crawl space, and his age ranged from 17 to 22. Body number 21 was August 6th to October 24th of 76. He was also found in the crawl space, and his age was ranged from 15 to 24. Body number 10 was March 15th to July 5th of 77. He was also found in the crawl space, and his age ranged from the 17th to the 21st, or from 17 to 21. In the fall of 79, forensics expert Petty Pat Gatliff used the skulls of the remaining unidentified victims to create facial reconstructions. Which I can send that photo later. It's
Is it eerily like, is it kind of like bones where they look almost exactly like the person, or?
No. So because it was 79,
right,
technology wasn't the best. It looks like a bunch of Halloween masks.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was very creepy. I had to exclude it from my notes because I couldn't look at it.
I mean, that's fair. You have a thing about masks. That's okay.
It was very unsettling.
I mean, I have a thing about masks, but my mask thing is more bothersome. It's more of a
some of them kind of looked like the Michael Myers mask.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it just,
that's unsettling.
It very much is. And so I had to take it out of my notes because I was like, I cannot look at this.
Totally fair. Totally get it.
So recent identification efforts.
Okay. So in the last 2-3 years?
October 2011.
Okay, cool. Cool.
More recent. October 2011, Cook County Sheriff Thomas Start announced that investigators, having obtained DNA profiles from the unidentified victims, were to renew their efforts to identify them. At a press conference, Sheriff Dart stated investigators were seeking DNA samples from across the United States related to any male missing from 1970 to 1979.
Okay.
So far, the identification of 3 victims have been confirmed, and numerous other missing youths have been ruled out as being victims of Gacy. And 4 unrelated cold cases dating from 72 to 79 have been solved.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Updated facial reconstructions of bodies 10 and 13 were released in 2018.
Okay.
In November of 2011, William Bundy was identified through DNA testing. Shortly after Gacy's arrest, Bundy's family had contacted his dentist in hope of submitting his dental records for comparison with the unidentified bodies, but the records had been destroyed after his dentist had retired.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm. In July of 2017, 16-year-old James Hakinson was identified via DNA testing. Francis Wayne Alexander, the most recent victim to be identified via forensic geology, was October of 2021. At the time of Gacy's arrest, he had claimed to investigators that the total number of victims could be as high as 45. However, only 33 victims were ever linked to him because they only were able to find 33 bodies.
Right.
More, but that they could only go on what they found. Investigators excavated the grounds of his property until they had exposed the substratum of clay beneath the foundation, finding 29 bodies. So basically, they went down as far as they could go. And then they're like, okay, he obviously could not have gone down any further.
Right.
So and then probably also pulling out machinery to help them scan the ground. To see if there was any disturbances.
Right.
Shortly after his arrest, Gacy informed investigators that he had assaulted and then released Jeffrey Rignall in March of 78. So after he released Jeffrey, he began to throw his murder victims into the Des Plaines River. He confessed to having disposed of 5 bodies in this manner. However, only 4 bodies were recovered from the river that were linked to him.
Mm-hmm.
When asked whether there were more victims, Gacy stated, "That's for you guys to find out."
The fuck?
Yeah. So he was straight up dick about everything.
No, ma'am. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Disputed DNA and dental tests conducted between 2012 and 2016 indicate that neither body found in the common grave in Gacy's crawlspace and identified as those of Kenneth Parker and Michael Marino in 1980 were actually Marino. Marino's mother had always doubted her son's identification because the clothing found on body 14 was inconsistent with what he had worn when she last saw him. DNA testing conducted on the exhumed body of Parker was proven that Marino's body had not been mistaken for his. In addition, the dental x-ray conducted on the victim identified as Michael Marino had revealed he had all of his second molars. A dental x-ray conducted on Marino in March of 76 revealed only 1 molar had not ruptured. So the dental discrepancy.
Right.
The original identification of the body has been disputed because the exhumed body had neither an upper nor lower jawbone.
Okay.
Nonetheless, the orthodontist who had identified Marino's remains has stated his conviction in the accuracy of his findings.
So he didn't have the upper or the lower.
Mm-hmm.
How are you able to? All right.
A clue. And so the orthodontist swore that his findings were accurate and that he stands behind his findings.
I believe most doctors, that's a crackpot.
Yeah.
That's crackpot.
On May 23rd of 1978, 25-year-old Charles Antonio Hatula was found drowned in the Pecatonica River near Freeport, Illinois. He had been missing since May 13th. Charles was an employee of Gacy's construction company and had been linked to the initial investigation of Gacy after Michael Rossi informed the investigators of both Godzig's disappearance and Hatula's death. Moreover, Rossi had stated that Charles was known to have conflicts with Gacy, and when he had failed to show up at work, Gacy had informed him and several other employees that he had drowned. Like, how would you have known that
Right.
if you didn't do it?
Right. Like, the math ain't mathin' here, my boy.
Right? Quit admitting to shit that you're not supposed to have any evidence on.
Right.
At the time of Charles's death, no more bodies could be stored in the crawl space, which leaves a possibility he had disposed of the body in the Pecatonica
Close enough.
River. However, the Des Plaines authorities had contacted Freeport during their investigation into Gacy and was told that Hatula had fallen to his death from a bridge. Hatula's death has officially been ruled as asphyxia by drowning. But who's to say Gacy didn't throw him off the bridge?
He probably did. Like, he was probably still alive when he threw him off.
Mm-hmm. And then drown.
We are currently experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Oh, man. I got a text message from my ex-boyfriend at 2 o'clock in the morning
Oh boy.
saying happy birthday.
Quickly block that number.
Yep.
Like, if you want to contact me, you can do it through Cash App or Venmo, where you have to pay for my time.
Oh, man. I'm surprised. I'm honestly surprised. I didn't expect him to message me, but
That's valid.
So where'd we leave off at? You're looking it up?
Yeah. Because when you close the app, it brings you all the way back to the top. So just leave you where you were at. Very annoying. Okay, got it.
You got it.
Yeah. Okay. So retired Chicago police officer Bill Dorsch stated he had reason to believe that there might be more victims buried in the grounds of an apartment building on West Miami Avenue in Chicago, where Gacy had been the caretaker for several years.
When was he a caretaker? It doesn't say?
It doesn't say.
Ugh.
In 1975, Dorsch, then a Chicago police officer, observed Gacy, whom he knew on a casual basis, holding a shovel in the early morning. When Dorsch confronted him, Gacy said he was doing work that he was too busy to do during the day. Oh, it might have been part of the construction business.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's valid. That sounds about right. That tracks.
Dorsch also said that several other residents of West Miami Avenue stated they had seen Gacy digging trenches at the property in the early to mid 1970s.
Oh, that gotta be haunted.
Yeah. Gacy was then still married to Carol Hoff. In March of 2012, Cook County Sheriff's officials submitted a request to excavate the grounds of this property. The Cook County State's Attorney denied the request, citing a lack of probable cause, included the results of a 1998 search of the property. However, the sheriff's office noted that in 1998, a radar survey suggested 14 areas of interest within the grounds, yet only 2 of these had been excavated. 4 of those remaining were described as being staggeringly suggestive of human skeletons. A second request to excavate the grounds was granted in January 2013, and a search of the property was conducted in the spring. Both FBI sniffer dogs and ground penetrating radar equipment were used, but no human remains were found.
And it's not like it could have just decomposed the bones.
No, because there would still been a void
Where
in the ground that would have, where they would have been.
Right. I mean, me personally, I think he would have buried the bodies and then dug them up.
Yes.
And moved them.
Probably.
I think that's why there was...
However, they did the radar surgery in 98, so he was already dead by that point.
Right. Wait, John Gacy was dead at that point?
Yeah, he died in 94.
That's right. Sorry.
It's okay.
I haven't had 2 full cups of coffee yet. I've only had 1 of the Stitch mugs.
Which in and of itself is 2 cups of coffee.
It's 2 cups of coffee, but I need 2 of them. I need 2 of them to function, yes.
One of the first things Gacy told investigators after his arrest was that he had not acted alone in several of the murders. He asked whether my associates had been arrested. When questioned whether these associates had participated directly or indirectly in the killings, Gacy replied directly. He later claimed Cram and Rossi, his roommates, were involved in several of the murders. Some defense attorneys and investigators researching the possibility of Gacy had not acted alone in several of the murders have said there is overwhelmingly evidence that Gacy worked with an accomplice.
I don't think he ever worked with anybody.
I mean, it is a little suspicious that he had roommates and he was murdering at the same time. So that part I'm just like,
Right.
It doesn't make sense, because I would have thought they would have been like, what is this noise?
Right. I mean, unless it was like, one of my roommates, I didn't even know he was a drug dealer. Like, the walls were thick enough. It wasn't a newly renovated building. It was one of the ones that was done in like the 50s or 60s, but they had cinder blocks for the walls.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really hear shit that he was doing. And they called me in for questioning, and it was like, I just rented a room from him. Like, I don't want anything to do with him. Can I leave? Can I void my contract? And they were like, oh yeah, I can definitely void the contract. Like, I was like,
shock.
Please don't arrest me, Mr. Officer.
I swear as innocence.
Mr. Officer.
In the 1980s, Gacy informed FBI profiler Robert Riesler that 2 or 3 PDM employees had assisted in several murders. The FBI profiler believed that there were unexplained avenues to the case, and that Gacy had killed more than 33 victims in multiple states. Gacy neither confirmed nor denied the suspicions. Jeffrey Rignall, who had been assaulted and tortured by Gacy in March of 1978, was adamant that at one point during his ordeal, a young man with brown hair watched his abuse, and that he saw a light come on elsewhere in the house.
His roommate had brown hair.
Yes.
And he was young.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
3 days before his arrest, 2 officers followed Gacy to a bar where he met 2 employees, Michael Rossi and Ed Hefner. An anxious Gacy was observed walking with the 2 out of earshot of the officers to talk before returning closer. Gacy said to both young men, "You'd better not let me down, you fuckers. You owe it to me."
What?
The officers then overheard sections of a hushed conversation between Gacy and the 2, during which Rossi asked Gacy, "And what, buried like the other 5?" In interviews from death row, Gacy said that at the time of his arrest, 3 PDM employees were also considered suspects in the murders, all of whom he said were in possession of keys to his house. I'm sorry, why would your employees have keys to your house?
I don't think of any reason unless, like, you, like, house sit for your boss.
Yeah, but that's different.
Right, I used to house sit for my old dentist all the time that I worked for, but I mean, like, I would give the
Otherwise,
key
there's
back.
no point.
Right, I would give the key back when he would. I kept the garage door opener because he always locked himself out of the fucking house. But
Yeah.
I always give him his key back because I didn't want to.
Right.
No, that's too fucking weird. Mm-mm.
In addition to Cram and Rossi, Gacy named his former employee Philip Paskey, who was a close associate of John David Norman and an acquaintance of Cram.
Mm.
In the late 1970s, Norman operated a nationwide sex trafficking ring based in Chicago known as the Delta Project. At least 2 victims believed to have been murdered by Gacy, Kenneth Parker and Michael Marino, had last been seen alive close to where Norman lived. This led to speculation that Gacy had been connected to this trafficking ring. Gacy claimed that he was not in Chicago when 16 of the identified victims disappeared. In 2012, 2 Chicago lawyers said travel records showed that he had been in another state at the time of 3 of the murders, implying he had 1 or more accomplices. Investigators note that Robert Young, the traveling companion with whom victim Russell Nelson was visiting Chicago at the time of his disappearance with, gave differing accounts of his disappearance. Young filed a missing persons report with Chicago police before unsuccessfully requesting money from Nelson's parents to finance a search. When Nelson's brothers arrived in Chicago to search for him, Young then offered them a job with PDM. Young was never summoned to testify at Gacy's trial.
Take a moment with our team as we pay tribute to the victims of this ruthless assailant. Timothy Jack Tim McCoy, age 17, born May 14, 1955, Nebraska. Died January 3, 1972. John Johnny Budkovich, age 18, born September 16, 1956, Croatia. Died July 31st, 1975. Daryl Julius Sampson, age 18, born December 6, 1957, West Virginia. Died April 6, 1976. Randall Wayne Reffitt, age 15, born September 20th, 1960, Kentucky. Died May 14, 1976. Samuel G. Dodd Sam Stapleton, age 14 or 15, born 1961, Iowa. Died May 14, 1976. Michael Lawrence Bonin, age 17, born February 7, 1959, Illinois. Died June 3, 1976. William Huey Billy Carroll Jr., age 16, born August 31st, 1959, Illinois. Died June 14, 1976. Rick Lewis Johnston, age 17, born September 25th, 1958, Illinois, died August 6th, 1976. Gregory John Godstick, age 17, born March 23rd, 1959, Illinois, died December 12th, 1976. Unknown white male victim, estimated age 15 to 17, 5'7" to 5'11", medium brown curly hair, estimated death date July 31st, 1975 to April 1976. Unknown white male victim, estimated age 19 to 21, 5'11" to 6'2", dark brown hair, possibly had a bad toothache at the time he had disappeared. Estimated date of death June to December 1976. Unknown white male victim, estimated age 22 to 28, 5'2" to 5'6", medium to dark hair, upper front teeth appeared missing and possibly wore dentures. Estimated date of death June to December 1976. Unknown white male victim, estimated age 17, 5'5" to 5'10", dark brown hair, estimated date of death June to December 1976. Unknown white male victim, estimated age 20 to 24, 5'8" to 6 foot, light brown hair, estimated date of death June 13 to December 1976. Unknown white male victim, estimated age 25, 5'7" to 5'11", dark brown hair, previously fractured nose. Estimated date of death December 20th, 1976 to March 1977. John Alec Sizik, age 19, born December 9th, 1957, Illinois, died January 20th, 1977. John Stephen Prestige, age 20, born November 3rd, 1956, Michigan, died March 15, 1977. Matthew Walter Bowman, age 19, born June 22nd, 1958, died July 5th, 1977. Robert Edward Bob Gilroy, Jr., age 18, born October 28, 1958, Illinois, died September 15, 1977. John Anthony Mowry, age 19, born March 13, 1958, Illinois, died September 27, 1957. Russell Lloyd Nelson, age 21, born September 26, 1956, Minnesota, died October 17, 1977. Robert David Winch, age 16, born October 19, 1961, died November 11, 1977. Tommy Balling, age 20, born July 5, 1957, Tennessee, died November 18, 1977. Unknown white male victim, estimated age 18 to 20, 5'1" to 5'6", dark brown hair, fracture of right elbow 2 years prior to death. Eye teeth were previously extracted prior to death. Estimated date of death July to September 1977. David Paul Talsma, age 19, born November 16, 1958, Illinois, died December 9, 1977. William Wayne Billy Kindred, age 19, born July 14, 1958, Illinois, died February 16, 1978. Timothy David Timmy O'Rourke, age 20, born October 20th, 1957, Illinois, died June 1978. Frank William Dale Langdington, age 19, born July 5, 1959, Illinois, died November 12, 1978. James Mojo Mazara, age 20, born May 28, 1958, Illinois, died November 24, 1978. Robert Jerome Rob Peast, age 15, born March 16, 1963, Illinois, died December 11, 1978. Unknown white male victim, estimated age 18 to 20, 5'7" to 5'11", previously fractured left collarbone, estimated date of death is unknown. For the victim who survived, Jeff Rignall, died at the age of 49, born August 21st, 1951 in Kentucky, attacked at the age of 27 on March 21st, 1978, died December 24th, 2000. Many missing persons were never reported to the police. After Gacy was arrested in December of 1978, it was learned that some of his identified victims had never been reported missing by any of their families. Some families were estranged from this relative. They were unaware that they were missing. Also, missing person reports from different jurisdictions may not have found their way to the investigators of Cook County. Should you have any information or be directly related to any of the unidentified victims of Gacy's, please contact your local police department or contact the Cook County Police Department at 708-865-6244 or by going to their website, cookcountysheriff.il.gov.
There has been several films and different media attached or made about Gacy. The made-for-TV film To Catch a Killer, which starred Brian Denny as Gacy, was released in '92. The film is based largely on the investigation and apprehension of Gacy following the disappearance of Robert Peast by the Des Plaines police. A feature film called Gacy was released in 2003. This film casts Mark Holton in the role of Gacy and depicts his life after he moved to Norwood Park in 1971 with his arrest until his arrest in '78. The made-for-TV film Dear Mr. Gacy, released in 2010, stars William Forsythe as Gacy. Forsythe as Gacy. The film is based on the book The Last Victim by Jason Moss. The film focuses on the correspondence between Moss and Gacy before Gacy invited Moss to visit him on death row in '94. The 2010 horror film 8213 Gacy House is based on paranormal investigators spending a night in the house built on the former site of 8213 West Summerdale. I could not do that.
No, I mean, I love myself some haunted shit. Abso-fucking-lutely not.
But that's too much.
Yeah. No.
The Discovery Channel broadcast an episode relating to Gacy's crimes in the true crime series The New Detectives, Case Studies in Forensic Science. This documentary features an interview between Gacy and FBI profiler Robert Ressler.
I do have to say I did watch that the other night. Because, I mean, I'm sewing. I wanted to watch something that I know about.
Yeah.
His voice. We heard Ed Gein's voice. We've heard, which we'll talk about at a later date, Ken and Barbie Killers. We heard Jeffrey Dahmer's voice.
Yes.
Out of all of them, his scares me.
It's so creepy.
It is. Ugh, it just gives me the heebies.
The Investigation Travel Discovery Channel, also known as the ID, has broadcast 2 documentaries about the Gacy murders. The first was commissioned for the Most Evil series, a forensics program in which forensics psychiatrist Michael Stone analyzes murderers and psychopaths. The second is featured in the Evil Lives Here series. This program explores how Gacy's actions affected his family. His sister and niece are among those interviewed.
Also a good program.
Biography Channel broadcast a 45-minute documentary on Gacy's crimes, which I don't know how they cut it down to 45 minutes, honestly.
Our entire podcast is almost 4 hours long, and we had to cut it into 2 sections because of how much information.
Right, so I don't know how they were able to do a 45-minute documentary.
Maybe they had an auctioneer. But
then again, they probably didn't go into in-depth as we do.
Probably not.
That's the only way I can see it.
Probably not,
yeah. The television program Psychic Investigators broadcast an episode entitled What Lies Below. Ooh. This program focuses on the consultation between Detective Joseph Konsiak and psychic Carol Broman, whom Detective Joseph had met on December 17th, 1978 to discuss the whereabouts of the body of Robert Piest.
Because he still wasn't found.
They were still hoping to still find him alive at that point.
Yeah.
The Lifetime Movies network series Monster in My Family broadcast Killer Clown John Wayne Gacy in August of 2015. The episode features Karen Kuzma, who is Gacy's sister, her daughter, and focuses on formative events in Gacy's life that may have initiated his later crimes.
Oh.
The documentary series John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise, was commissioned by Peacock, and the first episode was broadcast in March of 2021. This 6-part series includes interviews with Gacy, investigators responsible for his apprehension, and the Cook County Sheriff Thomas Dart. Conversations with the Killer, the John Wayne Gacy tapes, commissioned by Netflix and directed by Joe Berlinger. This series includes previously unreleased recordings of conversations between Gacy and his lawyers. The first part of this 3-part series was broadcast on April 20th of 2022.
I kind of want to watch it just to see what else I wasn't able to listen to on the other one, because I don't know if I'll be able to do that. But at the same
time, his voice.
Right. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, though.
Right.
Okay.
And the last one is The Defense Diaries, a podcast series hosted by the son of Gacy's defense attorney, Robert Mata. This series includes previously unreleased cassette recordings of pre-trial interviews with Gacy and his attorneys.
Oh, wow. That's...
You can go to the FBI records,
Mm-hmm.
the vault, and find information about John Wayne Gacy.
Which Emily did locate for us so we can post on the in the Facebook group.
Yes.
And most of it is eradicated.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it's still closed.
because it's still a closed case. They can't reopen it.
So I pulled from that and then 3 other sources.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled from biography.com,
Mm-hmm.
which is always a good place.
Always a good place, yeah.
Britannica.com.
Oh yeah, Britannica's great.
Yes. And then Wikipedia, just because I like to grab from Wikipedia and then go to other sources to see if it's actually accurate.
Murderpedia and the Murder Museum has a lot.
Yes.
And then your doctor sister,
Yes,
and her other half went to the museum
in Savannah.
Mm-hmm. And she said that was
there was a lot of Gacy stuff in there.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of his paintings are there too.
Yes, which you said was extremely freaky.
Now, I did look, you sent it to me on TikTok. The museum is they came out with a documentary, or they're coming out with a documentary on Gacy.
Yes.
Okay. And then what else is?
Once that comes out, we will most definitely share it with the group.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 110%. There is 2 other notable facts. With Gacy, his likeness was used for a character, which everybody kind of speculated, but it is actual fact. They used his likeness of Pogo the Clown in American Horror Story Freak Show.
Yes.
For that mean monster guy. And then the other one is, we were talking about how the house had gotten taken down.
Yes.
Did you want to talk about why it got taken down? Or
basically it was because of the fact that they pretty much gutted the house in their search, and then I wasn't able to find anything else about it.
So there is stuff in journalism articles. I went back and looked last night. Josh says I'm a little obsessed with this podcast, which is okay with me. So, I'm sitting there having a poop, researching like you do. And I found a couple of journalism articles from the 80s and the 90s, of which they discussed the land was turned over to his family.
Yeah.
Because it was already paid off, They decided to remove the house and build further back on the property, because it was a pretty big property.
Yeah.
What they did is they paved over the area where the original house was. So that way,
that makes sense.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, so they're honoring the people that died there, essentially. Because they didn't want it to be some sort of monument for people to... Your Wi-Fi keeps freezing. Is it me? Am I the problem?
I don't know.
Maybe it's because my phone's on Wi-Fi.
Oh, my phone's on Wi-Fi too. But
no, I know, but I'm in the middle of nowhere, so sometimes when I put my phone on Wi-Fi, you get all...
That's valid.
Pixelated and glitchy. It was my fault. I'm sorry. So, it's kind of like one of those, what was it? Which I'm going to be covering later this year because I do live in Texas, the Texas killing fields.
Yes.
It's going to be 2-parter episode like these ones were because of how many murderers did use it as a dumping ground, but they've paved over a good chunk of those fields.
Yeah.
To honor those people, to get rid of those memories. And there's a memorial garden that they did start in one of the areas, and I was like, that's good.
That's good.
I am thoroughly disgusted, and I did not enjoy my
Trust
time.
me, I didn't either.
We just to let you guys know, we had to take 3 separate days. No, it was almost 4.
No, it was 3
It was
because
3?
we didn't record Sunday. We
Right.
recorded Monday. Recorded a little bit Tuesday.
Right.
Finished it up Wednesday.
We could not. We're finishing this up on my birthday. Yay! But that's how much we love you guys. Is I'm taking my birthday to record this podcast for you.
Yes.
I did not have fun, but I did enjoy being able to honor the dead.
Yes.
And to be able to tell their story a little bit, because it's not, we don't come on here just for the serial killers, guys. Somebody had posted a video the other day and sent it to me on Facebook, and they were like, is this like you? And I was like, absolutely not. Where it's like, oh my God, the Ken Barbie killers were so iconic. Can you believe how amazing they were? No, we focus mainly on the victims. We focus on the crime.
Yes.
We focus on the psyche of the killer. And it disgusts me to think that there's people out there that think that this is okay.
Right.
There is still, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second because I'm allowed to, because it's my birthday.
Of course.
It's my birthday. Okay. So there are still hundreds of thousands missing and Indigenous men, women, and children that aren't taken seriously. There are hundreds of women that are missing and murdered that are still not taken seriously because people say you have to wait 48 hours. And there was a law that was passed, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that because of the high rise of domestic violence and because of the high rise of the murders that happened in the 80s and the 70s, that you can now do missing persons in the 24-hour window.
Yes.
As long as they have like an act, like, I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. Really. If I were to turn up missing, my husband can go and report it because I have such
It's very suspicious.
standard, right? I have such a standard thing of how I do things. I have a schedule. I literally have it in my calendar when we record. I have it in my calendar when I clean things. I guys, if you looked at my calendar, I'm obsessive compulsive. It's the trauma. It's one of those things where they had to pass a law.
Yeah.
And it's sad and it's sick and it's depraved. But now we're able to actually help people that, need the help. We
and
are
hopefully be able to find them sooner and
right. Not
in some cases, hopefully still alive.
Right. In hopes. There is a case that we're covering later this year we're covering a couple of missing persons cases, missing family cases, some of which were found later, some of which they were found dead, unfortunately. But there's one that I think you wanted to cover where they actually were discovered living. Like they were found.
I think so.
Yeah, it was a missing persons case, and you were like, "Oh my God, they actually found the person and they're alive." But it was like 20 years after. I can't remember. We're gonna have to go look at the reports, but we got a lot of, as Josh and I say, we have a lot of.
Yes.
But I did have fun learning new information about Gacy, I do have to say.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I'm sorry you had to.
No, it's fine. I did not have fun researching this.
I have no doubts. I have my cuddle blanket right here, just to let you know. And I have Oliver
my weighted oxylevel.
I have Oliver on standby. He's like right here on the floor, just like next to
Just
me.
in case you need something else.
Just in case I need something else.
Yes.
We are cutting out parts, but our podcast for this whole episode is over 4 hours.
Jesus.
So, I mean,
surprising, but not surprising.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like, I knew going into this, doing some of these serial killers, that it was gonna
be a lot.
I didn't realize it was going to make me depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
same.
Oh man. But be safe out there. Keep being spooky. Please do not take drinks from strangers.
Yes. If you see something, say something.
See something, say something. And
with that, stay spooky, and we'll see y'all next time.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
Next time on the Pandemonium Witches.
He tricked several teams into believing he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments for scientific research, and then paid them up to $50 each. Told officers he wanted to clear the air.
Oh, now?
Because he's caught.
Huh? Look at the consequences of your actions.
Oh, I know. He claimed all were teenage male runaways or male prostitutes, the majority of whom he had buried in his crawl space.